will be not related to the public hearing on the demolition. And then we'll get to that momentarily. So is there any public comment for anyone wanting to address the Historical Commission?
No hands raised online.
Thank you.
Is this relating to what you're gonna go out and meet about in terms of the property on 28?
No, that'll be the hearing, which I'll open as soon as
And then
we
the
do
comments will come during that hearing?
Yes.
Got
on
it.
that, right, yeah. Yeah, okay, great. Do you want to talk about that, Bill, or actually?
Just as a note, that the Wampanoag marker dedication is Saturday, June 20th at 12:30 at the Veterans Memorial Park. And there's going to be, prior to that, some conversation up at the farmer's market, I think at 11 or 11:45, something like that.
Yeah, there's going to be the
Yeah.
Wampanoag singers and dancers. So Bruce has been involved in that. So the Historical Commission is well represented on the committee, the ad hoc committee of awareness that's been putting all this together, and Bruce has been involved in that.
Anything to add to that, Bruce?
No, it's actually at 11 o'clock, and it's a singing and dancing event that they encourage the public to participate in.
Right.
Yeah, that's at the farmer's market, and then they'll move for the ceremony
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
to there.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any, we don't have any oops, sorry, we do?
I do, just something came in yesterday.
Okay.
It was CC from the Mass Historical Commission to the town regarding the Phase 3 of the sewer. The quote, "the procedures guiding post-review discovery of historic properties and human remains." So ultimately, the procedures that were submitted by the town and in conjunction with PAL were approved by the Mass Historical Commission. I'm just mentioning it now, it's not part of your packet, it came in after the date. I'll email it out to the commission so you've got a physical copy, and it'll be on the next agenda so it becomes public.
Okay, and I presume these will be in effect for Phase 3 of the sewer?
That's correct.
Right, okay. So that's, because they are moving down South Orleans Road toward the Peck property, where we know there's some significant amount of indigenous history along in that area. So there could be some discoveries there. Okay, so unless there's anything else, I'm going to suspend the commission meeting and open the public hearing. So in order to do this, I move that the Orleans Commission open the public hearing regarding the notice of intent for the proposed demolition of structures located at 16 South Orleans Road, dated May 19, 2026. Duly noticed in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, and the Commission's rules and procedures, and the Commission invites public comment on this matter. Does anybody second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the public hearing is open. We have Ryan, please come on up.
Is it here?
Yeah.
You might move this over.
So I
That's fine.
wanted to just make one comment before we get started. I know there are folks on the commission and some wanted to comment on this, and I just want to throw out the thought that there are two different structures on this property. So I want to keep open and actually I'm interested in what people think about a discussion of treating those two separately and voting separately on them. We don't have to decide that, but I just want to throw that out there so for people who are commenting. So, Ryan, go for it.
Good afternoon, thank you, Commission. What I'd like to do is just read this little narrative into the record, and then we can go off script and have a discussion about it. Good afternoon, members of the Orleans Historic Commission. I'm writing regarding the property located at 16 South Orleans Road and the current request associated with the demolition of the existing structures located on the property. I originally purchased the property in 2022 from the previous ownership that operated the site as Cuffy's. At the time of acquisition, both structures were already in significant disrepair. From the outset, my intention was to redevelop the property either through restoration and adaptive reuse, or of the existing buildings if feasible, or through demolition and redevelopment of the site should restoration prove impractical. In 2024, the property was sold to Plan Z LLC, whose members are Kirsten Johnson and Lauren Shongor. Following acquisition, Plan Z pursued redevelopment concepts for the property focused on residential housing opportunities under the Town of Orleans zoning framework. A conceptual development plan was prepared consisting of 7 luxury condominiums pursuant to the town's apartment development and multifamily zoning provisions. In December of 2024, a preliminary site plan review meeting was conducted with the town department heads to review general concepts and redevelopment intentions for the property. As part of that process, significant consideration was given to preserving at least one of the existing structures. Specifically, there was an earnest effort to evaluate relocating the yellow building to another property under common ownership, where it would be converted into affordable housing. Following extensive due diligence, including relocation logistics, structural analysis, and redevelopment costs, it became clear that relocating and rehabilitating the structure was not economically viable. Thereafter, Plan Z elected to market the property for sale in order to focus on other investments. During early 2026, several discussions took place with prospective purchasers. One prospective buyer proposed redeveloping the property into attainable workforce housing under the town's newly adopted Downtown Housing Overlay District, approved at the November 2025 town meeting. The purpose of this overlay district is specifically to encourage year-round attainable housing, workforce housing opportunities, and mixed-use redevelopment in Orleans sewer downtown areas. Another prospective purchaser, an established antiques dealer with strong appreciation for historic architecture, intended to restore and repurpose the existing buildings for his own antiques business. In an effort to support preservation, Plan Z elected to move forward with that buyer. The purchase agreement included a 60-day due diligence period during which the buyer undertook substantial investigation into the feasibility and cost of restoring the structures. After a considerable effort and consultation, the buyer ultimately determined that restoration of the buildings was not economically feasible and withdrew from the transaction. Following the collapse of that sale, Plan Z resumed discussions with the prior interested party, whose intention is to redevelop the property for workforce and attainable housing consistent with the goals and the intent of the Downtown Housing Overlay District. A condition of that transaction is that the existing structures be demolished and removed prior to the closing of redevelopment, so efforts may proceed promptly thereafter. A delay in this process would result in the buyer withdrawing from this agreement and forced to seek alternate sites. These sites are limited to begin with and cost prohibitive if found. Furthermore, this would delay the seller's ability to reinvest in other areas of the community. It's important to emphasize that throughout both my ownership and Plan Z's LLC's ownership, there has been ample opportunity to simply pursue demolition through the formal delay process. Had a demolition review application been filed years ago, even the maximum 1-year demolition delay period would have long expired and demolition would now effectively be allowed by right. That course of action was intentionally avoided because both ownership groups made good faith and genuine efforts to explore preservation, relocation, adaptive reuse, and restoration opportunities before arriving at this point. Unfortunately, after years of evaluation and multiple independent analysis by prospective owners and developers, it's become increasingly evident that restoration and reuse of these structures is financially prohibitive. Multiple parties independently arrived at the same conclusion despite sincere efforts to preserve the buildings. At the present, the property represents an opportunity to contribute towards one of the town's most pressing needs, which is year-round and workforce housing for local families and residents. The Town of Orleans recently undertook substantial effort to adopt a Downtown Housing Overlay District specifically to encourage this type of redevelopment and housing production. Any proposed redevelopment of the site will be subject to Architectural Review Committee, ensuring that the intended use be appropriate in design and is keeping with the architectural character of the neighborhood. Collectively, we're all positioned to participate in a decision that will have a meaningful impact toward the betterment of our community. For these reasons, we respectfully encourage the Commission to consider foregoing the imposition of a demolition delay, given the extensive period of prior ownership and substantial efforts undertaken to explore preservation alternatives and the conclusions reached by multiple independent parties regarding feasibility. Imposing a delay at this stage would be punitive and serve little to no practical purpose beyond postponing the creation of much-needed housing opportunities for local families and workforce residents. We appreciate your time and consideration and thoughtful review.
Thanks. So what I want to do is just by process here is I think what we'll do is open it to commission members to ask questions of Brian, and then we'll ask anyone else who wants to come up to has anything to say. So anybody have any questions for Brian?
No, I was going to, first of all, thank the gentleman, because that was a very helpful history without having to pull it out of him. So, thank you. And I was going to propose that we make the distinction between the two edifices. I think it's, I'm not pretending to speak for the board, but it's my opinion that we would be of the opinion that the rear edifice is beyond repair. I suspect is our conclusion. We haven't discussed it together, but we visited it, four of us. The front building, on the other hand, is substantially different in terms of its architectural and historic value from our perspective. And so it's almost like we should, I'm proposing that we move the rear building off the agenda. We either vote on it or discuss it separately and be done with it, and then focus on the front, if that's okay with the other members of the board.
It's not okay with me.
fine, okay.
I think we don't
Then
know.
I withdraw.
We have done very little research about the history of this building, of the barn. What was the original,
I
what the
withdraw
short
it.
shape
It's not
is in.
necessary to
No,
have
I
this.
think we should have a discussion about separating them, because I'm, for different reasons, I'm inclined in your direction, Bruce, which is, I think that building has less value in its current state because there's so little of what the original structure looked like left. So I'd be willing to have that conversation, and we may come to a different conclusion,
Why
so.
why don't we listen to what everybody has to
Yeah.
say before we get to any decision-making discussion?
Nobody's making decisions. I'm asking if anybody wants to ask Ryan questions, so
Yeah, I
that.
have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Do you have any of the hard information regarding the analysis that was done by yourself and previous owners or present owners with regard to the cost? In other words, it is fine for applicants to come with this language, and we appreciate all
Sure.
that's gone into it, but I'm just curious to know whether or not you have in your possession or can share with the commission exactly what the costs are associated with this.
I can share that with the commission. I'd prefer not to make it a matter of public record what my build costs and redevelopment costs are in construction. What I can tell you is a ballpark figure for restoration, proper restoration of a historic structure is gonna run you somewhere around $1,000 a square foot.
Okay.
So if we're talking a 2,400 square foot building, there we're looking at about 2.4 million.
Thank you.
The rear building, I will say, would be significantly less than that for redevelopment purposes, only because, believe it or not, the rear building structurally, as far as, it wouldn't require a lift to put a new foundation under it. It's just because it wouldn't have the load capacity that the house on the street would have. So, proper redevelopment of that property is gonna be, restoration of that property is gonna be in the $3 million, $2.5–3 million range.
There's a sentence in this letter that I'm curious about.
Sure.
And it is, a delay in this process would result in the buyer withdrawing from this agreement and forced to seek alternative sites that are limited to begin with and cost prohibitive if found. Furthermore, this would delay the seller's ability to reinvest in other areas of our community. Can you speak to that last sentence?
Which part, the very last,
Yeah.
reinvest in other areas of this community? I can't, because it's not public yet. One of the sellers is purchasing another business that's located in town. A business that's been in town for 30-something years. So its proceeds from this sale is what's being used to purchase this other business.
I mean, you realize that sentence is sort of self-contradictory, right? On the one hand, it says that the buyer's gonna withdraw, the prospective buyer's gonna withdraw because they don't wanna wait. On the other hand, they're saying there's nothing for them to buy to build, so it's kinda like, you know, it doesn't, it's not a strong argument that the buyer's gonna back out because they have to wait for a year. Waiting for a year, might still be viable because they can't find any other, they can't find any other site. So I understand.
So you're speaking to a different point. It's
I'm
not-
speaking to
not-
the first two parts of the
For the
sentence.
first two parts of that, okay, because I was thinking maybe I wrote seller twice,
No.
or buyer twice. As far as the buyer's position now, and again, I can't, because none of this is public yet, I can't disclose too much information. The buyers have access to funds to begin development on a project now. Those funds may not be there, should this process be delayed.
I'm not sure that individual properties finances and somebody's ability to spend the money on one aspect or another aspect is the business of this commission.
Correct.
I don't think it is. I don't think this commission, we've never gone into how a project is financed or alternative use of financing.
Right.
And I would dare say it's simply not the business of this commission.
I don't necessarily disagree. I'm certainly willing to share as much information as possible.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. One is, I don't quite understand why we're not speaking to the owners, and why you're speaking on behalf of prior ownership, current ownership, and future stewardship. I don't know if that's relevant to the town or to the board, but it seems, or if it's, perfectly normal for people to come in here, but that seems odd to me. It raises more questions, I think, than it answers.
Well, I think it's very common for somebody to represent ownership when presenting in front of a board. I was the previous owner of this property. The current owners of this property, I have very close relationships with them. I've represented them on many fronts in the past.
The other question I had is, you talk about a lot about sort of, doing good for the community, and, doing what's right and trying to find a path for this property. I was struck on the site visit about the state of disrepair, not just to the house, but to the property. The shopping carts, the trash, the weeds, the blight. And it seems to me that, at least I would have questions about how sincere is ownership if this is the state of the property. I mean, if you lived next to somebody who had a home like this, would it not bother you?
It would, and up until recently, when these conversations began, the property had been maintained as much as possible. Reinvesting into that property and there was repairs done when I had originally acquired that property, like broken windows, so we plexied those up just to keep,
I'm talking
critters
about
out.
mowing the lawn.
Yeah, no, currently now, no, there hasn't been much effort put into cleaning up the property. There's a litany of reasons as to why. I prefer not to get into all of those, but no, I mean, it's understood that it's part of this, it's part of the reason this property is being sold is it's not getting the attention that it needs. It needs to get out of the portfolio, and it needs to be moved into the hands of somebody that's gonna redevelop this property in a responsible way that is gonna benefit the community. Currently now, it's not. There's several properties in town that fall into this category. We happen to be in control of one of them. We're not thrilled about the state that it's in. Obviously, our intent is to not leave it that way, take a lot of pride in the majority of what we do own. It's just gotten to a point where it's a busy period. We don't necessarily have all the resources right now to maintain it.
You realize that, just one more point, that, it may appear that this is like self-fulfilling prophecy, like willful neglect of a property that leaves you no option but to want to demolish it. Does that, could you see that, how we might look at it that way?
I could see how you could interpret it that way. It's certainly not the case. I mean, the property had been maintained up until several months ago. I mean, we had a roof blow off in the rear during that big winter storm, and that's kind of what really started to deteriorate that rear portion of the building. I mean, it's not beyond repair at this point, although the structure itself is pretty tired. Those properties, I can tell you, in 2022, when we acquired them, they were in the condition that they are now. And you keep a little bit going there as you can. I occupied that property for storage, and we kept it as clean as possible at that time. But until a redevelopment plan was established, throwing money at it when we don't know exactly what can be done with it at that point. It just wasn't an investment we were making.
Was there any discussion with the current potential buyers who are looking to develop that lot about incorporating one or both of those structures into their new building?
Yeah, there has been discussion. There had been discussion with them about doing that. They reached the same conclusion I did. And when I originally purchased that property in 2022, that was a consideration, was to kind of, again, adaptive reuse of it. You know, kind of bring some of it back to a mixed use component to it. It's, you know, the property allows more density to, and we just can't get that density in the units that are there. You know, the town has taken great efforts to create this downtown housing overlay district, because there's just an incredible need for attainable housing. I'm not talking affordable housing. We've got plenty of that going in. We've got it up on West Road. We've got it going in at Governor Prince. We're talking about housing for working class individuals. And the town adopted these bylaws. They spent, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars writing these bylaws for the overlay district. And there's 3 or 4 properties that fall into this district that fall outside of the village scale corridor, which in the intent of that was specifically was to allow for more density for attainable housing. This isn't subsidized housing. This is 100 to 200% AMI. We're talking teachers, we're talking firefighters, we're talking police officers.
I just want to follow up. So would it make any difference, that calculation, about whether or not to incorporate the existing building, if you could demolish the back building and leave only the front building there? Because it gives you more of the lot to use for higher density.
The issue is what we're trying to do is create housing at, we're trying through models of efficiency, right? So the cost of restoring that building and converting that building into apartments, you know, into condos, into whatever you want to call it, you know, dwelling units. It's more expensive to restore and convert what's existing than it is to build new when we have more of a standardized system. Bringing those buildings up to code and then bringing those buildings up to multifamily code is a whole different ball of wax. If you were single family residence, not as cost prohibitive, but trying to create more density that's consistent with the overlay district, which is what the taxpayers voted on at town meeting. This is clearly something the town wants. It doesn't make sense. It reduces the amount of density that property would allow. You know, I did consider, I mean, I have a site plan dated December 12th, I want to say, 2024. So we're going back a year and a half now, where I own another property in town where I looked at relocating the yellow building. I like it. I'm not going to sit here and argue that the property doesn't have charm or doesn't necessarily have any architectural character or historical character to it. It does. We went through great efforts to try to find a way to preserve that, because I knew this conversation was going to be contentious, potentially contentious. I knew this conversation wasn't going to be an easy one. I knew nobody was necessarily in favor of tearing down a building that was built in 1860. Like, I understand that. I've been doing this my entire life since I was 17, fresh out of high school. I know the process. And had I, 2022, 2023, 2024, when this site plan was done, I could have been sitting here a year and a half ago, and then this conversation would have been out.
Appreciate that. The problem is, for us, you didn't come to the commission, whoever was on it then, and we can't, make up for that. We're charged with looking at this for the community, and we can speculate that if you had done that, the building would be gone by now, but it's not. It's here, and we're here, and I don't think for us that's a consideration. That I understand you've put a lot of due diligence into it, and maybe this building would be gone by now if you had brought it before us, but it hasn't been, and we can't pretend that it was. We have to look at what's facing us now. And this decision about that building is what is, for us to make today. And if the commission had made it a couple of years ago, then that period might have gone. I don't, whatever. But I guess what I'm saying is, I understand and reading from reading what you put in there, what went into it. Unfortunately, that history can't be, I don't think, a consideration for the commission today, based on the fact that this is the first time we're getting the opportunity to make a decision about this building.
I understand that, and if, I don't want to interrupt you, I do want to comment on that, so, but I'll wait. So, I understand that, and I think, and I respect what the commission does here, and I think what the intent of this delay bylaw and this commission is to impose a time period when opportunity can be taken to preserve what's there. And by all intents and purposes, that is exactly what we've done for the last 3 years. I mean, we've implemented the intent of this commission ourselves, understanding exactly the importance of what we're trying to do here. And beyond that, not only have I come to that conclusion, other individuals I'm sure that have all sat in front of you before, looked at it the same way I did. And I think the most recent opportunity we had was this particular individual that was gonna restore it for an antiques business. I mean, he's been in the business for 40 years, and he was very disappointed when he had to walk away from the deal because he couldn't make it work. And that was gonna be a labor of love for him.
Couple comments. One is, I want to emphasize we're the Historical Commission, not the Housing Commission.
Understood.
And we should not be taking into decision-making, building extended housing in Midtown. That's not our mandate, and we should not be doing that. I think it's absolutely immaterial. I also think the fact that this did not get brought in front of the Historical Commission at a different point in time is absolutely totally immaterial. We're a forward-looking commission. We look at what's here, and then we make a decision going forward, not going backwards. And the last point is that the fact that somebody looked at it and thought it was too expensive, I don't think we have anywhere near enough information to make a judgment on that. It may have been that the purchase price was too high. It may have been that they didn't have the financial funding. It may have been that the interest rates at that point in time went sky high, which I think they did go up to 8-9%, and they originally planned it at 3 or 4%. We simply don't have the information to implement, I think, to put that into decision making. I think our decision is whether or not this property is preferably preserved.
Right.
And I think we just simply make the decision based on that. I think the other stuff is wrong.
Let me speak to Charles. I don't disagree with you about the housing piece. It's not something we do. It's not something we are schooled in necessarily. However, on a very general level, I would warn the group or anyone else not to say this is an either-or question, that this town must have either affordable or attainable housing or historic preservation. There's space and there's opportunity for both, and we shouldn't be. Historic preservation is an economic generator, and it's what helps drive tourism. There's lots of data from the National Trust on historic preservation in DC to back this up. If you look at the view of the town in its plan, in its comprehensive plan, there's a lot about character. A lot of that character is based on the history of this place and the buildings that are here. So I think, I would just warn, I agree with Charles, housing is not our matter, but let's not pretend this is an either-or situation.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. I wanted to go a little further and say I think it's important from the commission's perspective, and in order to make sure that we continue to have support in the general community for what we're doing, that we don't make it look like we're standing in the way of community development or of housing. That's not what we do here either. What we do is try to find a way to preserve the history, and it's not necessarily, it's certainly not with the intention of standing in the way of development. That's not what we're trying to do. That's, you know, and I think that we'd all be very happy to see a building on that property that incorporated one or both of those original structures in it. You know, I lived in a building that had, that incorporated a 200-year-old pub into a modern apartment building in downtown Boston, and that won awards for the creativity of doing that. I think there's plenty of room for the compatibility of historic preservation and various kinds of development, so I just wanted to make that point too. But I think Charles is right. Our decision is whether or not that building is, those buildings are preferably preserved, and that's the decision we'll make when we finish the discussion.
If I could just, in your presentation, you talked about 2024, there being substantial luxury condominium units, and that has now obviously changed as ownerships have changed in the overlay district, et cetera. But I guess in thinking about how this structure could become a luxury unit is pretty easy.
I want to back up a little bit on that. The sentiment towards the luxury development that was originally proposed, we shifted away from that because we felt we felt a responsibility that there's enough luxury homes, and half the reason why everything is so cost prohibitive these days is we're losing our working class.
Mm-hmm.
And I have 18-year-old boys, twin boys, just graduated from Nelson. It's going to be difficult for the generations behind me. It's difficult enough for my generation, we just snuck in, and but everybody younger, we're losing that. And like we talk about the historical fabric of our town, and I appreciate that. I do. I'm not sitting here pretending this isn't an important conversation. It is, but. You know, and I forget who mentioned, I think it was you that mentioned that, you know, that these historical structures drive tourism. If we don't have a workforce to support tourism, what are we doing here?
To not ignore Charles's position of it's not our point, but I'm wondering, as this discussion continues, as to whether or not this property doesn't become a luxury development as opposed to attainable housing in order to preserve these structures, that's all. And I don't know what the scale is, and I don't know what the return on investment would be for anybody, but it's just a conversation.
To clarify, if the question is this a bait and switch? And that's a fair question. What prevents it? We get approval, we demolish the buildings. What prevents us from building luxury condos? What I can assure you is the proposed developing party would not be doing that. I cannot disclose who they are at this time, but I'm certain that would not be the case. You know, with that being said, a delay process. You know, if we go through a delay process, and I can't tell you what another buyer is going to do. I can't. I can only tell you the sincere intent of the buyer in front of us.
One other issue I just want to raise for the group that I find troubling is that this sits next to the former Pinnacle property, which has been under demolition delay, and so that's almost 2 acres of downtown historic property potentially to be lost. It would leave you with no historic buildings from Cove Road all the way to the Lost Dog. And that to me is, you know, and I know it may not be Ryan's issue to discuss here, but I think it's something for us to consider.
If there's no more questions for Ryan, I know we have a couple of folks who wanted to, I think wanted to, did you have anything to say? Yeah, so, thanks, Ryan, and, you know, you can, hopefully, we might get back to you, some more questions.
Do you want me to go sit down?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Wherever you're comfortable, you're good.
So I have a couple thoughts. So I'm Joan Nix and formerly on the commission. And I wanted to say that, from my point of view, these two buildings, both of them, are undeniably historically significant, and they are in a highly visible location. I want to talk about what is the purpose of a demolition delay. It isn't to be punitive, and I don't think even instituted today, it's not punitive. It's because sometimes there are changes. A buyer may appear who didn't appear last year, who could promise to maintain the historic structures. A demolition delay, it's a pause. It's not a prohibition against demolishing, it's a pause. Then I would say it isn't the Historical Commission's job to maximize the return on investment or to solve the housing crisis in Orleans or to implement the overlay zoning district. It's their mission to try and protect historic resources, and they're the only organization in town which is attempting to do so. I would also say an increase in density is also not an objective of the Historical Commission. So saying that this project would create more affordable housing and it would increase density and it would fulfill the mission of creating or utilizes the new overlay zoning downtown, and isn't that wonderful, it's advancing all those things. None of those things are on the Historical Commission's goals. So I would say these are undeniably significant, and it is completely appropriate for the demolition delay to be instituted on both buildings.
Thank you. I do have to say, while though some of those things are not necessarily on our agenda, like I said before, I don't necessarily think we want to get in the way of that either.
Right.
We have to look at what our charge is, but that doesn't mean we can't try to find, make sure there's room for some of those other things.
But I don't think we can do the other things if it's against us
Absolutely right.
delivering what our charge is.
Absolutely right. Our charge for us is what we have to do.
I think our discussion should be, is it perfectly reserved? And I think that's our only discussion.
Agreed.
That's my point of view.
Yeah, I think that's right. We have to go by what our mission is here. Anyone else? David, did you have?
Yeah, no, just very briefly, and Ryan, I'm not addressing you, this is really for the committee. David Herrick, I live in 163 Beach Road in a historic home. And I also was a member of the Historic Committee some time ago. And I'm just literally here to register my concern and disappointment that yet again another historic property in this town is in the crosshairs of the demolition. And I think it just goes on and on and on. And I would encourage not only putting a delay on this, but I, again, would encourage the committee to go back and relook at the whole demolition delay. I think, there are towns and cities in this country and many internationally that they don't have a delay, they just have a you can't. And we're really at the risk of losing the character of this town. The town speaks about the character. Well, all of the few that are left, historic buildings in this town are under pressure. And nothing that was built in the past 50 years has any character to the town, which I'm sure you all agree with. So I'm just really here to, again, reinforce how important it is to retain these historic properties, irregardless of all the other issues. I think it's really, really critical.
So I want to reinforce what both Joan and David said. We're trying to preserve the historical character of the town so that we don't become Hyannis, or we don't become Ocean City, Maryland, or Atlantic City, or Atlantic City, New Jersey. We're headed there. And I think tearing down these buildings that that don't need to be torn down, just move us further along that path. So anyway, I just want to reinforce.
I think there's a litany of things that move us further down that path. I don't disagree. I think it's the 10,000 square foot houses that are being built on the bluffs that match those same descriptions of the towns you described.
I think
I have no
everybody here-
objection to those
I
whatsoever.
think everybody here would agree with that.
But I have no objection to that, but it's, Hyannis has a working class at least. Hyannis has housing for working classes. We don't. We have affordable housing, which is a significant demand for that. We don't have middle income housing. And we
Once
need that,
again-
and the average cost of a home being $1.2 million in the town of Orleans, we're pushing out our working class. And I understand it's not why you're here, I understand that.
Okay.
However, if we're gonna, speak on all fronts, it's a serious consideration. It needs to be a consideration.
And I just wanted to reflect the position for the record of Dwayne Chase. He's not here, in fact, he's out of state. He is the president of the board of the French Cable Precision Museum. And he wanted just me to pass along a couple sentences in support of preservation of this property. He said, while he didn't speak specifically to the property, he did, as a neighbor, say the French Cable Museum was bought in the early 70s from the French government. Someone wanted to buy it, tear it down, and put up a convenience store. It has to be one of the best buildings in town, but someone wanted to, quote, improve the area. In my experience, old buildings get torn down for made-up reasons. Not my words. These are Dwayne Chase from the Cable Museum.
Thanks. Could we make sure we get that so it goes into the minutes?
Yep.
And Ryan, can I just ask you, the letter you read, was that substantially the same as it was in the submission that you made to us?
It's exactly the same.
I believe it should be,
Because I wanna make sure that-
verbatim.
I want to make sure
but
that
yes. Yeah.
gets reflected in the minutes too, so we get that all. All right, if there, Bruce?
First of all, I want to compliment the other board members on their intelligence and wisdom and, knowledge of all of this. I feel a little bit like a rookie here. And my remarks are in some ways so subjective that I hesitate to make them, but in the interest of being open and honest. The back building, for whatever its historic value, has no aesthetic appeal to me personally. It just doesn't. And so I could also imagine the possibility of granting, which is partly of what had informed my first comments, the permit to move forward on the back building while withholding the permit to move forward on the front building, and wondered what impact that might have on the potential ultimate preservation of the first building, and in that sense, a bird in the hand, half an egg, whatever analogy you want to use.
I think I do want to preserve the separate vote on the two buildings, so let's.
Well, you need a committee.
Well, we don't have an
support of that
application for them
first.
separated. We have to vote on the application as we have it.
I don't think that's right. I think that those buildings are separately listed with the Mass Historic Commission, or even if they're not, I don't think it matters. I think we can do what we want to do here. Just like we approve partial demolition of buildings.
But the application, the applicant requested that.
Yeah.
I do not think we as a commission can make that decision. We can only act on, my point of view is, we can only act on what's in front of us. What's in front of us is a demolition delay, requested demolition, both those buildings. I think that's all we can act on.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Does Mike have an opinion about that?
Once the discussion portion of the hearing is done, you can close the hearing. Any motion that is of the desire of the commission can be made regarding the application. If that is the interest of the commission, that motion can reflect it. Does not require to act one way or another.
Can I just say, though, I feel all I've done is walk through that building and look at the Form B. If we're going to vote to say, yes, take a building down, I want to know more about it. I want to know what that barn, the history of that barn. I don't think we know.
All right, hold that thought for a minute. Joan, do you have any thoughts on the architecture? Do you think there's any distinction to be made between those two? Joan's an architect and a former member, so asking her what...
I have seen neither except when they were cuffies
Oh, okay.
on the inside. So
I'm talking about the outside, 'cause that's all we really can talk
but
about.
I would say their historical significance is not based on whether they're pretty or aesthetically
Right.
appealing. The significance to me is that the one was, that they were both built in the, 1860,
1861.
Yeah, right.
1861 and 1875. I think the significance of the barn is that, isn't it amazing that a house like that had such a substantial barn? It shows there were barns in the middle of town.
It was the original, the portion built in 1861 was the original mansard portion of that barn.
Yeah.
And the two wings were added, one likely in the 50s, the other one's 1979.
Lan, does it make any difference to you whether we put a delay on one of those buildings or both?
Not particularly.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, you know, my position is I wouldn't like to see a delay on any
Right.
of it. You know, again, it's the reality.
I mean, as the applicant...
I'm not opposed to that. I would let the board vote as they see fit.
All right, do we have enough information to do our, do I have to close the hearing first and then we do the voting? Okay, so I'm going to move that the Historical Commission close the public hearing regarding the notice of intent for the proposed demolition of the structures located at 16 South Orleans Road, dated May 19, 2026, having received public testimony and such other evidence has been presented, and that the commission proceed to deliberation. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed. Ryan, it's a public hearing, you're welcome to stay, but you don't need to. Same for Joan and David. So, all right, so it sounds like we want to talk about this a little bit more. So that is, your position is that we don't have enough information, but on the other hand, I don't sense that you're saying the same thing about an affirmative decision to impose a delay, so.
I view that as one property, and I think, you know, the history of barns across the Cape is a rich one, and if there's an original mansard section, that is, I think we need to know, you know, sort of what more about that, what the structure is, what the function was, but I would not pull these apart and say, just because, you know, somebody added on in the 50s means the whole thing should go. I don't think it should. I think what we need here is time, and time to, you know, hopefully, and part of this is up to the town, but to find some, you know, some legitimate avenues for this property. And I don't think, you know, making any decision but delay is the right decision.
Delay starts the clock.
Right.
I'm not allowed to talk anymore.
Right.
The hearing's closed.
Yeah, I conceptually agree. I think somebody said the barn was built in 1875, excuse me?
1861.
1861, I thought I heard 18, it doesn't matter. The 19th century, well, I think they're historically significant. I think we should impose a delay on both of them.
So nobody here but me just walked through that barn and thought, wow, this has been changed beyond recognition, and I'm not sure how significant it is anymore.
I don't like that argument. I mean, honestly, we've had that come up a couple times, and I think that's, you know, sort of subjective. And, you know, I think if you're dealing with property that's 200 years old, you know, people will have done stuff to it. And, you know, maybe there's, you know, maybe you undo some of that stuff to bring it back to its original state, but I don't think you kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater.
No.
Can I just ask, if preserved, what's the conceivable I know this isn't even in our purview.
Right.
But I'm just having the discussion anyhow. If that property is preserved, what's the conceivable appropriate utilization of it besides turning the front building into a couple of condos and turning the back building into 2 or 3 condos?
I'm not sure that's what
Well,
we're
I
here for.
acknowledge that it's not.
What about this argument, though? By allowing the owners to take that building down, you create more incentive, since now you've got more of the lot to use, you create more incentive to preserve the other building, which is clearly the building with more historic value. You don't think there's any merit in that argument? That gives them more, and now they've got a year to think about, okay, we can be more creative about our solution. We can incorporate the front building and build more in the back, create that density we're looking for, but preserve the front. You don't think that incentive is worth the loss of what's already an unrecognizable building?
I don't think that's incentive. I disagree with it. I think that gives them incentive to figure out how to come back and reapply for a change to the demolition of the first building. I think the question is, I don't think our job is to incentivize people to do one thing or another. Our job is to preserve historically buildings, properties that should be historically preserved.
Yeah.
I think that's our job.
Yeah, but our job.
I think both are.
But we're not doing that job if they wait a year and demolish both buildings. We're
Wait.
doing that job more if we give them the incentive to not wait a year to start a project, because all they have to do is incorporate that first building. I think you've now done a better job of preservation by doing that than if you say, we're just gonna stand in the way, let you wait your year and demolish both buildings.
That's not what
You know,
we're
we have
saying.
that
What we're
issue-
saying is, let's take a pause. Let's assess this property historically. And look for, let the owners, let perhaps some folks on the town side, let economists, whatever, have another look. I don't think and frankly, I question the intent of owners who would willfully neglect their property to the point of demolition.
Well, we can't get into, I understand your point, we can't get into that intent in our discussion about whether we're gonna impose a delay or not, I don't think, because we can't read people's minds. What about this thought, though? And this, I don't think this requires the commission to do anything differently. If we decide that both buildings are preferably preserved, there's nothing to stop Ryan from coming back and saying, hey, look, would you lift the demolition on the back building if we come up with this new plan that preserves the front? He'll have that option anyway.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
part of
out
the process.
That's out there on the record. So if we impose a delay on both buildings and you recognize there's an opportunity to come back and say, hey, look, what if we get rid of the barn and keep the front? I just want to put out there that, given the way this is seeming to go, that's an option that you might still.
But I want to be clear, as a commission, we're not making a commitment of what a future
Right.
commission would vote one way or the other.
Right, we could still say no if he came back with that, but I just want to put that out.
Little sidebar, it makes the 18-month option that we've discussed a number of times much more attractive.
Yeah.
From our perspective.
Absolutely.
You're right, different
Just,
discussion.
just to mention it
All right.
again.
Do we have further discussion, or what I'm sensing is that the commission would like to move forward on a single vote of whether or not the buildings on this property are preferably preserved.
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay, well,
Two quick comments. One, applicant has requested to speak again, you may recognize him.
okay.
Number two, I just want to state for the record, the notice of intent that was submitted states the appeal from this process goes to the select board. That has been changed at a town meeting, and the appeal process no longer goes to the select board. It is something that can be heard at district court.
Has that been ratified?
Yes,
Secretary of State?
has been ratified, yes.
Yeah, you have a right of appeal.
Yeah. Do you have anything else, Ryan, you want to say before we?
No, because I don't sense we're getting into a horse trade here, so I think at this point, and quite honestly, it's in the owner's hands. I can represent them as much as I can, I represent them as much as I'm authorized to. So whether they choose to preserve or not becomes their decision. I agree, for the record, if I'm allowed to speak, I do agree with your perspective of creating incentive to possibly preserve something instead of animosity and saying, see you in a year.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what anybody's saying, we'll see in a year. I think we'd love to see, an opportunity to hold on to that property and see it, renovated and rehabilitated, so, yeah.
As did we,
Yeah.
as did I from the start, as did they at purchase. We've looked at it for 4 years, trying to find a way to do such. It's unfortunate that there's not a subcommittee that is purchases these properties and rehabilitates them on their dime.
Yeah. So I think we need a motion. Somebody wanna make the
I'll
motion?
make a motion that the properties on said address are preferably preserved.
Okay, so just to be sure, we're talking about 16 South Orleans Road.
16 South Orleans.
Including
Okay.
both the home and the barn.
Correct.
And I second that.
All in favor? Opposed? Good, 500. Ryan, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so the hearing is closed, and I can reopen want to reopen the meeting for Historical Commission meeting and move to our next item on the agenda, which is the CPC liaison update. And that has to do with the review and possible vote to sign the French Cable Station Museum's Preservation Restriction Agreement. So, has everybody seen this? It was part of the packet. So basically, if I understand this right, and Charles, I don't know if you or Mike wants to know, basically, I'm not sure how it's related to CPC, but the French Cable Station Museum is signing a preservation agreement.
I can clarify something.
Okay, good.
Virtually all, if not all, CPC grants for historical, under the historical umbrella, have a historical preservation restriction agreement that limits the ability of the owner, if they accept those funds, to be able to make changes to the property that don't fit that preservation agreement. Theoretically, that's been in place for a long time. In reality, it was not always executed in the past, and the commission is going through, the CPC commission is going through this very diligently to make sure that every preservation agreement, every historical funding that CPC funds does have such a preservation agreement.
Oh, okay. And so what this does is, it says that if the Cable Museum is sold, that preservation agreement stays with the...
Because it stays, I'm not a lawyer, but it stays with the deed, I
Yeah.
believe. It stays with the,
So I think what we need is a motion, who would I sign this thing? So we need a motion that me representing the commission, or I representing the commission would sign this agreement because of the commission's signature is required as part of this process that CPC does. So anybody want to move that, we can go ahead and do that.
I move that we give you the authorization as a committee to sign.
Thank you. Okay, well, second? In favor? Opposed? Okay, so we will do that. Oh, I guess I'll do it right now. Oh, okay. Yeah, because this one only writes on my left tab. All right, so the next, thanks, Mike. Sign right here, okay. My arthritic hand, which has trouble signing. No. Okay, thank you. All right, so the next item on our agenda is the discussion on the zoning board application for 66 and 76 Route 6A, which is the Governor Prince property.
yeah, let me talk about that.
Okay.
Pass this down so people can see. That's what's being requested.
For the record, what's being passed out is also in the packet.
Oh, okay, great.
This is, we have no regulatory authority here. We do have the ability to do an advisory opinion on what we think of something like that. The zoning board can either pay attention to it or they cannot pay attention to it. if you look at what's in here, you'll see what they've asked for zoning. I didn't do the pictures. It's an incredibly dense, high property that I do not think fits the historical nature of this town. It may fit Port of Hyannis, I don't think it fits here. And
Sorry, Charles, can you just say who the "they" is? Who actually?
ZBA.
Is the Board of Appeals
Zoning
themselves?
Board of
No, but they're receiving the application. Who's asking the zoning board of appeals?
the applicant is for it says here, the applicant is Preservation of Affordable Housing Corporation and the Habitat for Humanity of Cape Cod.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
But-
Three groups that are
Okay.
asking.
Yeah, there are three.
And has this been before the ZBA already?
Yes, and there was, I was not part of the meeting, I believe you were, Bill,
Yeah.
and I believe there was a fair amount of dialogue and concern with it, and there's a follow-up meeting in a couple weeks on that.
Correct.
I think when a building's being put into place that's so substantially different than the historical character of the town, I think we have an obligation to give an opinion that we don't think it should be done. Not that we have the ability to make a decision, but we have the ability to give an opinion. That opinion would go to the zoning board. They may pay attention to it, they may not pay attention to it.
What about this architectural review board?
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to have, somebody like, who's the guy in Eric, or somebody like Joan, or somebody who could really
Yeah.
tell us why this, contemporary architecture is absolutely, and density is absolutely inconsistent.
Well, I can tell you what
Yeah, we can
what
all
this
tell
is.
you
This
that.
is to create density,
Yeah.
and it basically is jamming in as many people as possibly be jammed within the existing space that takes place. It
And-
pushes that, if you look at the zoning, if you look at the waivers they're requesting, it's moving closer to the boundaries horizontally and back and front,
Right.
and going higher
Yeah.
than what our zoning allows.
So
So-
could I just want to follow up on that, Thaddeus, because I think there's something here for us as an action point. There's the Architectural Review Board, as I understand it, is supposed to take historical preservation into consideration. And I don't know how much is in their charge, but right now is a good chance for us to have input into that, because all of the charges, I don't know if that one's been done yet, Mike, but all of the charges for the commissions and committees are being looked at by the select board now, so we might be able to have input to see what kind of historical preservation requirement is in their charge and make sure that it's emphasized. So I think that might be a good follow-up for us.
Isn't there, I could be wrong about this, isn't there purview for commercial buildings?
Yes.
It's mostly commercial, but I think
I
it's.
thought it was all commercial.
It's all commercial, plus I think it's things like this that are
Might be, I
multifamily.
don't
The
know. I'm not
Architectural
sure.
Review Board is meeting tomorrow night at 6:30, and on their agenda, prominent on their agenda, is discussion of this property, and I intend to attend.
What
Well,
time
I
is
think,
that?
there has been a fair amount of dialogue by people who have reached out to commissions, which is probably what that was too, probably somebody reached out to that commission. Somebody reached out to me, though I said something beforehand. Actually, I said to Jim, and Ron Peterson was there, somebody reached out to him. So there is a fair amount of noise going on right now of dissatisfaction with what this will be.
I've seen that reflected in the newspaper, so I think that's right. But I do think if we could find a way to have some sort of liaison between, or have somebody on that board who is particularly sensitive to, the work that we do, would be helpful.
That's a different conversation than this, because I don't think they have any, I didn't think they had any regulatory authority for anything other than commercial. I could be
Okay.
wrong about that.
Okay.
So
But-
I'll just jump in.
What's that?
They are part of 164 that outlines anything that's multifamily or commercial. Single-family homes are excluded from architectural review.
Okay,
So
so,
part of the project is 70 single-family homes, that's phase 3. First 2 phases multifamily, that will go to architectural review once a special permit has been determined by the zoning board of appeals.
If I could just say, the discussion at the presentation of this and the feedback from some architects and designers within the audience were that building number one, in particular, the largest one, could be altered such that it would not be as imposing. However, the pushback on that from the developer and some members within the community is that it's an efficiency of scale. In order for this project to achieve funding and to pay for itself, this is what the community is faced with. And so I do think, to your point, we have an opportunity to weigh in, at least in an advisory capacity.
Yeah.
And tomorrow night is a classic place that we should be able to do that.
And I think we should do it in a positive tone.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think what we should be saying is, there are other historic buildings on that street.
Yeah.
So if you go down
Emac
further.
and Bolio kind of.
Yeah,
that's it, yeah.
that building is a historic building, the building down in the corner is a historic building. So, in order to preserve the character of the neighborhood, the Historical Commission is recommending that the building fit in scale, to the extent possible, in scale
And
and in
design,
design.
yeah.
Now, obviously, if there are commercial issues around the scale, that's one thing, but that doesn't necessarily affect design. So, at least in one dimension, they should be able to accommodate.
I inquired whether or not the slope in the back of the property could be reduced in order to bring the height down, because we're looking, so the request, the maximum height is 30 feet. They're looking at 42 feet 9 inches. Well, it's going to be 43. That's 13 feet across and I would say, not that it looks like a warehouse, but it looks like a mill,
If I could, the submission that was chosen was from an RFP process, so the project was submitted as to what was going to be built there as part of the RFP process, has been evaluated. So there are some design elements that will be reviewed by ZBA and ARC, but they are not going to be looking to deviate much from what was submitted, 'cause that's what was approved through that process. So
But my understanding, Mike, was that the original proposal for the bank in on Skakit Corner there was equally objectionable.
not an RFP process.
Not an
This is
RFP process.
town-owned property.
Okay.
So the town is disposing of the property. It has to do so by putting out,
So the
we own
town,
this, we would like to see what you do with this. We had 2 proposals come in, they were evaluated, 1 proposal was chosen.
and now the
deviating
town
from-
has to give up any ability to affect that design?
No, the
That's-
zoning,
It's actually the opposite of that. The
Oh.
town chose which proposal it wanted to move forward with, and is now going through the regulatory process on the ZBA and the RC.
But when you say the town, some entity within the town decided on that proposal, and now everybody, including the broader community, are getting their chance to look at that for the first time. There's not gonna be input in to change it?
I mean, that was a pretty lengthy process as far as the review of the proposals that came in. The owners of the property, the Affordable Housing Trust and the Select Board, as well as the committee that reviewed those, did do that in public for quite some time. Second, it is your ability to have discussions and have advisory opinions to the committees that are reviewing this. Select Board has voted to support this process as recent as last week. And the last thing, I just will say, just sitting here, it is not lost on me that during the public hearing, there was discussion that this commission does not take into account housing, and then is now taking this up to look at the density of this project. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah,
This
well,
commission in that sentence, which commission?
This group here.
Okay.
yeah, what we said was that it's not, but that supports the argument we're making here, is that our job is historic preservation. And we can't let housing always trump historic preservation, because then we're not doing our job. And I think the same is true of this building, that by overwhelming the streetscape of that street with something that is completely out of character, we'd not be doing our job if we didn't complain about it, I think. Now, what you're telling me is that our complaint is not gonna go anywhere because the decision's already been made.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying for a town to dispose of property, the way to do so under Massachusetts state law is to put out a request for proposal or a request for qualifications or some sort of solicitation. As part of that, you submit, hey, if we buy this, here's what we're going to build. That's what was done. 2 proposals came in. They both were scrutinized for quite some time. One was chosen. So they're gonna build what they propose. We can't deviate if they, for example, they say we're gonna build 78 units. Can it be land at 76? Sure. But then coming back and saying 40 is what the number is, that's not what was submitted.
Yeah, I
But Mike,
don't,
if they don't get zoning board approval for the variances, they have to get that to build.
That's correct.
That's correct. All I'm suggesting is we give a recommendation that
Just-
we don't think as proposed as proposed, that building will fit the historical nature of buildings in the town of Orleans. The Historical Commission as such believes that changes need to take place to fit the historical structure, something to that effect. The zoning board can totally ignore that, or they can pay attention to it. There is, I doubt that we're gonna be the
There was an
only.
opportunity during this meeting, which was Mike can attest to this, around the issue of safe harbor. And the notion of safe harbor was that the town, in competition with itself, would have 30 days in which to evaluate this and say, no, we don't want to do this. That was taken off the table by the board chair for just that reason. They didn't sort of want to be seen as, the ZBA did not want to be seen as in opposition to what had already been approved. So, am I correct in that little dialogue?
so this is a pointless exercise, basically what we're saying. I mean,
It's not, I mean, Charles' point is the one that if you were interested in making an advice, but there is no regulatory mechanism, there's nothing in chapter 106 that would say this historical commission would like to see X.
We
But it
can't
goes-
make a decision to change it.
Yeah.
But we can say, as a historical commission, we don't think as proposed it's appropriate.
But that's fine, and we'll do that. All I want to make the point is that we're tilting at windmills. There's zero chance that advice is going to be acted on.
We may be tilting at windmills. I don't believe it's 0, but I think it's a very low chance. It depends, that would also depend on the weight. If there was a tremendous amount of pushback from different organizations in the town, maybe it would change. Probably not, but
So why don't we do this? Mike, help me out here, because I think what we need is somebody to draft what our recommendation is going to be, but we don't want to wait till the next meeting to approve that. So what's our process? Can we designate a subcommittee to do that and then just trust the subcommittee to come up with something?
well, I think we can come up with, we could say something very simply, and I don't think it should be overly complex. We could say something very simply, that the Historical Commission does not believe that this building, as presented for the waivers to the zoning commission, fits the historical,
Streetscape.
Which is compatible with.
is compatible with the historical nature of Orleans,
Period.
period. End of the conversation.
But let me just ask Mike a question. This is the kind of, I assume we'd have a lot of discussion like this going forward with the overlay. Is there a way for us to participate in any way, in any part of the process where, so that we're not sort of put in the position of sort of tilting at windmills? I mean, is it legit that we're concerned about the compatibility of new buildings in the downtown area?
So, can I just respond to that in general conversation? Ed and I attended a chair meeting this morning where I raised that question with the select board, the chairman of the select board, is there a way in which all of the advisory committees and the commissions can provide sort of consensus input, not that it's going to change anything, to these massive types of projects that come along? Because this project that we're talking about impacts on our view of the historic streetscape. It impacts on the environment, impacts on agriculture and transportation, economic development, and on and on and on. And so rather than having these disparate meetings, is there a place in which, when these things are developed, because I periodically feel like we get held hostage, and we don't want to hold anybody else hostage, so how do we do this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in a position to
No.
know, but I agree. I mean, seems like
I'm not sure I want to agree with anybody being held hostage here. I think when you ask the question, us, as a historic commission, your scope is fairly narrow. You're appointed to uphold Chapter 106. And as we had a public hearing today, we can look at what that means.
Yeah.
And if the building is deemed significant, they're required to come before this board, and you are there to determine whether it's preferably preserved.
But
That is what the commission's main thrust is. As
I
far
don't
as
disagree
historic
with that, and
streetscape,
that is what
I
the
will-
law says, and that's what our charge is.
You're a regulatory board, and that is the regulation you're.
Yeah.
But that's a
But we-
pretty
we-
narrow,
we-
that's a very narrow interpretation. That's accurate, but if you look at the language, I think you read me on the phone the other day, that establishes the commission, it's much broader than that. It's preserving the history, it's historic preservation of Orleans. It's much broader mandate than that. I understand we don't have any regulatory power beyond what you just said, but I think the mandate in the establishment of the commission is broader than what the bylaw delineates for us
Bylaw
to do.
is what's been enacted locally.
Okay.
That's what,
I do want to make a note that once before, as a commission, we have given an advisory opinion where we didn't have regulatory authority. We gave it as it related to the firehouse.
Yep.
We said that it did fit Secretary of Interior standards, what we believed as an advisory opinion to the CPC,
Right.
that it was not an appropriate usage of CPC funds, and we said a couple other things. The CPC took that, and that drove the rejection of that.
Correct.
The advisory opinion that we gave absolutely drove the rejection of the application.
However, that is different than what this discussion is about. One of the things that periodically I experience, and that is that there are departments and boards and commissions within this community of which we are one, that periodically I feel like we're working at cross purposes. And I don't know how to resolve that. And maybe it is through consensus, perhaps it's through meetings, I don't know. But I know that the issue of housing, at town meeting, we lost $10,000 because somebody stood up and said, well, there's going to be economic development in East Orleans, and in part, that shut that conversation down. And so, to me, I would like, in the future, as we look at our charge, et cetera, to have face-to-face conversations with members of other boards, et cetera, so that we're not having this kind of back and forth.
Yeah, I don't know what the forum for that is. I think, everybody's got their own sort of mandate, but I agree with you. I think it would be, if we could have some sort of a awareness in all the relevant places, that would certainly be a benefit to us. All right, I'm trying to write down, so The Orleans Historical Commission advises the zoning board of appeal that the proposal for 66 and 76 Route 6A is not compatible with the streetscape and would be detrimental to the historic character of the immediate area. Someone want to wordsmith that?
We could say appears incompatible, you know, that just, it softens it a little bit, but, you know, as opposed to,
Is that also going to the architectural review board?
We can send it there, we can send it to whoever we want to.
Is there a schematic of this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, it was part of what here, I ran out of time,
It's a
okay.
Is it-
complete tear
Turn it out.
down.
Is it one line?
yeah.
Yeah,
Is it a complete tear down?
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Tear down, and that new building is gonna take up almost every inch of space on that property.
Right, where most of it now
The
is
denseness
parking
is,
lot and
You know,
garage.
the interesting
well, I don't
thing
even know
is,
if there's enough parking for more than one parking spot per place, I don't think there is.
my understanding is that in the 18th century, there was a tavern on that hill. Half of it went to Eastham when it was taken down, the other half went over here to our motel that sits down the gully on 6A.
Oh, right.
But it was a historic property at one point.
That is page 99 of the packet, links to all the information.
Okay, got it.
All right, so this now reads, the Orleans Historical Commission advises the zoning board of appeal that the proposal for 66 and 76 Route 6A appears incompatible with the streetscape and would be detrimental to the historic character of the immediate area. We're okay with that?
It's well done.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we're gonna send that.
Oh, wait, I think we have to vote on it.
Oh, all right, let's do that. So we need a motion,
I'll make a motion that we do that.
okay?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Just a little sidebar.
Yeah.
My understanding is that when the Norsets were the residents of this town, that was actually a very important property to them
Yeah,
because of its location in proximity to the town cove and the resources that were there, and it was used as an agricultural land. It had been cleared. I don't know if there's any way to confirm this, but that it had been cleared, and it was village property for them. It was an important village property.
yeah.
that sounds like a good, the spot. is just-
It's a good spot.
Yeah, Mike, you'll help me figure out who we send that to, and,
They meet next on the 24th. Given the time, I will point them to this point in the hearing, and if the minutes are available before, then I'll provide the written as well.
That's the zoning board.
Okay.
And I'm indicating that the architectural board is meeting tomorrow night, and it would be nice to get this to them.
yeah, all right.
Do that as well.
Okay, I'll email you this before tomorrow. Okay, so the next one on here is the Chapter 106 demolition conversation. And I have a few notes on this. And Mike, I know you put on demolition by neglect. I want to make sure whatever thoughts you had on that, we get out.
This was a note from last meeting. It was requested that in the discussion or movement to have Chapter 106 reviewed and perhaps updated, that there be a spotlight on demolition by neglect. So I included it here as a specific item.
Great, because it got me to look at the demolition by neglect provision, and it's more robust than I recall, from before. So I recommend everybody read it, because it's very useful, and I think it in our discussion today, it just drove it home to me that we're not doing enough with this provision. So it's in section 106(4)(c) is the citation, and basically what it says is, if we think a building that's a commercial building or an unoccupied residence, if we think a commercial building could be in use, but a residence has to be unoccupied, if we think one of those things is being neglected with the intent of demolishing it, or just neglected and letting go on to seed, we can negotiate with the owner to make repairs. And if the owner fails to negotiate in good faith, we can go to court and get an order for the repairs to be made. So there's actual enforcement capability here, which would prevent the situation we get a lot where people come here and say, well, it's in terrible shape, and that's why we have to demolish it. Because if we don't let it get there in the first place, then that argument isn't there. So I think the commission should have a meeting. I'd like to invite the building inspector to a future meeting. I don't know if the summer is a bad time for them or what, but I assume we're gonna have a July meeting. I think it would be useful to hear what the building inspector has to say about this provision, because the building inspector is explicitly mentioned in the bylaw as having to do with the enforcement of this. So I think it would be useful for us to hear from the building inspector. And I think, and this is a question maybe for discussion, actually, no, first I have a question for the building inspector, which is, do they maintain a list of unoccupied residential buildings? Because we would need that to know if a residential building is unoccupied. Now, I'm thinking of the one on Monument that was unoccupied, that they just let it go down, and it was ultimately
There's
demolished.
another on Brick Hill.
Yeah.
A Greek revival on Brick Hill that's been empty for years.
So-
Beautiful house.
So we need to know if the building inspector knows if a building is unoccupied or not, because that right there, we could say, okay, is it on our list and is it unoccupied? Automatically, we say, we gotta look at that.
How would
And
they,
this was a discussion a few years ago. And as I remember, and my memory may be wrong here, but I remember Ron talking about it. I think he basically said the building inspector at that time, which are not the same people that are there today, had no appetite for enforcement of this or at all.
Yeah. Well, then we should talk to him, because I think that it's doing a disservice to the town to not get on top of these things before they're beyond the ability to bring back.
Well, frankly, I'm shocked that the town does not have a role in 16 South Orleans Road. I mean, you know, it shouldn't necessarily be up to the historical commission to enforce, you know, basic, upkeep. You know, in many cities, that would be red tag bang, and you'd have to deal with the consequences.
I'm not sure, and I guess it's a conversation with the building inspector, I'm not sure they view that as their job.
Right, it's a housing inspector and the.
Board of Health.
Yeah, but-
Somebody.
But it's our job, and there isn't any, I don't think there's any reason why we can't see if the building inspector would assist, and if they won't, then fine, we need to find some other way. But
Sorry, no,
Just for
certainly-
clarification, role of building inspector is currently vacant, is out to be hired. The building commissioner, which the inspector reports to, is occupying that role, so I can invite the commissioner.
Okay, that'd be good. I didn't realize that there was a distinction. And so what I'm wondering is if we shouldn't ask the building inspector to be the custodian of a list of candidates for demolition by neglect. So
How would they know houses are not
however
occupied?
they come, well, they must have, who has a.
I don't think they know. I don't think they have any idea.
Commercial buildings can be occupied and still be subject to this. So we would have to figure out, try to find a way to determine if a building
The
has been
first
occupied.
qualifier is it must be a significant building, so
Right.
it must appear in that list that was voted
Would
on
be.
Yeah,
last, and then
Yeah.
it would
Yeah.
be
right.
with visual inspection, so you don't need to, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not occupied.
And I have
Yeah,
a
but
candidate.
they come by, think about it, they come by when they're doing residential buildings, and some of them historical, some of them not. When they appraise the property every 2 or 3 years, or 4 years, they come by and they look at the outside. They don't go in, they don't necessarily go inside, they don't know whether the building's occupied or not.
But they have to issue
Enough, so the properties are assessed regularly, so what,
Last time, I think my property, somebody went by, was probably 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And they didn't come inside, they just stayed out.
so,
yes,
Two-
so what, okay.
No, I'm just saying, I don't see how such a list,
There is no such list.
they
There's no
know,
official list.
they never revoke the occupancy permit for a house because it's not in good enough shape to have people in it.
The health department will, if there's, we're kind of off the path, but if there's a health complaint, for example, trash in the yard, or it looks like it's unsafe, they will go into the property and inspect. That's where that inspection takes place. The building inspector is more certificate of completion, certificate of occupancy, when a building permit is taken.
I think if we got to look at what had been done, I think we'd find there are very few buildings where they have they've gone in and exercised that authority.
So there's.
You know, to say that the building is, would take away the occupancy permit, because I think we find that's very rare.
It's usually when a property is being built initially.
Yeah, that's what they do, they come in, you know, and they want to make sure you fit the, you know, both the health requirements in the building and the,
So we don't necessarily know then, but there is one other condition I forgot, that if it's a significant building and it's being rented out, that can also be occupied and be subject to the demolition by neglect. I don't know how you know that either.
Is there a way to, like, for instance, if you took 16, is there a way for, you know, when we do get one of these applications, to assess the state of the building and make, you know, a judgment of our own?
We're probably late by then.
well, we've had applications here that were clearly demolition by neglect.
Yeah.
Sometimes, depends on where they were, some of them, for whatever reason, we allowed them to demolish it, and sometimes we did not. But we've seen a number of applications here that were clearly demolition by neglect.
Yeah, but it's an interesting point, because I'm not sure I really had appreciated the fact that we can tell people they need to fix it.
Do we have to have the building inspector involved?
Not necessarily, not from what I read.
Okay.
I can read it out loud if they
Yeah.
would
I mean-
like. I can put it on the screen. It is fairly lengthy. And first, if the commission has reason to believe through visual inspection or other means that a significant building may be undergoing demolition by neglect, then the commission shall notify the building inspector and the owner. The commission shall hold a public hearing to determine whether or not the significant building is undergoing demolition by neglect. In furtherance of determining its condition, the commission may, at any time, request an inspection of the structure by the building inspector. If the commission determines that the significant structure is undergoing demolition by neglect, the commission shall attempt to negotiate a voluntary agreement with the owner for appropriate and timely repairs sufficient to structurally stabilize the significant structure and/or prevent further deterioration. In the event that the commission determines that it is not able to negotiate such an agreement with the owner for any reason, or that the owner has agreed to undertake but has failed satisfactorily to complete such repairs in a timely manner, then the commission may take such action as is permitted under this bylaw, including seeking a court order that specific repairs be undertaken to secure the significant building under the elements, vandals, or vermin, to halt further deterioration and/or to stabilize it structurally. The commission may forbear from commencing an action in court for any reason. Upon completion of all repairs that have been agreed upon between the owner and the commission, that have been ordered by the commission, that have been ordered by the court, and upon certification by the building inspector that said repairs have been completed, the commission shall certify that the structure is no longer undergoing demolition by neglect.
Yeah, and further down, Mike, there's a section on maintenance. Can you look at that too?
Would the town pay for the legal expenses involved in that? It's never been asked for, but that's.
I would not commit to that here. I think we'd have a long way to go before we were.
Yeah, hopefully, get the court.
Yeah, but it is, I mean, it's a fairly strong tool in our tool, you know, box. I mean, we could act now, couldn't we, on the property we just heard?
Well, I think we have to get a partnership with the building commissioner.
Yeah, I think we should talk to the building.
Before we do.
Yeah, I mean,
Without that
it sounds like a lot of work,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's as effective to do something when we've imposed it, when they already come before us with
No,
a demolition.
I get it.
But the building across the street, Yak Arts building,
Yeah,
to me,
yeah.
it's another historic building, and that is up for sale. And I guarantee you that
It's coming.
it's coming. As soon as it's sold, somebody's gonna come in front of us and say, we wanna knock down this building. So why not try to do something now,
Yeah.
before there's a new buyer that is gonna inherit it in a bad state. You know, I don't know that the person who's in it has the means to do anything from what I hear, but it
I
doesn't.
think they have 3 mortgages against it.
Is that right? Yeah.
So without getting into property specifics, and not sound like a broken record, this is what 106 says. 106 is what the commission is to be acting
Yeah.
on. So if there's an appetite to visually inspect these properties, the next step is to tell the building commissioner what those findings are.
Okay.
So having him here, I think, makes a lot of sense to
Okay.
make sure that that is something that you both are on the same page with.
Okay.
So I couldn't hear everything you said, but I think you said, I couldn't hear everything, but did you suggest that we have the building commissioner come to a meeting?
Yes.
Okay, I agree.
All right, let's do that, because what I would like to do is develop a policy that says that we're going to, going forward, enforce this provision that we've neglected, and then widely publicize it, because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah, but let me just, I don't want to belabor this, but on the Yak Arts, for instance, you know, if that, you know, say that owner sells to, you know, Joe Schmo, now it's Joe Schmo's property, he's gonna, the owner today isn't gonna demolish it, but Joe Schmo is when he buys it. And so then, does Joe Schmo be liable for neglecting his property? No, because he just bought a crumbling house.
That's what I'm saying, that's why you want to go
If
after.
you buy a brownfields, trust me, you're responsible for what,
I mean, if there were some way to make
Environmental
a
mitigation.
buyer responsible, that
Well,
would be
The
great.
buyer would be responsible.
The buyer would be responsible?
If the.
The buyer owns the property, if it needs to be repaired, or if there's demolition by neglect there, he has to
Yeah, okay.
correct it.
Yeah,
Good.
and
When
especially
you
if
own a
it's
property, you own it.
especially
Yeah,
if it's already on the record as being on our, as being, you know, demolition by neglect, you know, according to the bylaw.
The
Right,
other-
well-
The other parties that we need to communicate with, and that's the real estate industry.
Yeah.
If you're gonna enforce this,
Yeah.
trust me.
Well,
Yeah.
it just, there's another house just to put on your radar, on Monument Road, just beyond the Civil War monument that just sold, and 1700s. And it's, and you know, you've driven by the barn there that's crumbling. But I wonder what the status is gonna be there.
Okay.
It did sell?
All right, so we're gonna.
600,000.
We're gonna keep this on the agenda, and I put, ask the building inspector to come, and we're gonna talk about, so that was the first topic under the bylaw discussion. The next one was, I think there was a sentiment that we expressed actually even in the hearing to increase the delay period. And I still wanna have more conversation if there's not consensus about simplifying the definition, especially now that we know what the houses are that are on our list.
So let's talk about the timeline. If we,
Yeah.
the first time we could have any impact would be in the fall meeting.
Right.
To get that done, there's a process, and at one time I looked it up, but there's a process and a form and approvals and stuff to get a warrant, to
Yes.
get a warrant in place. There's a whole process. My guess is that process would need to start pretty soon
August.
to get that in.
Yeah,
That's for the warrant article, sorry to jump in, but if you're interested in changing a bylaw, you'd want at least one public hearing, you want public engagement. You do reference all the time the town meeting vote, having public engagement earlier,
yeah.
especially to talk about what demolition delay should and should not be, or how it should be framed, is, I think, very important.
Yeah, I don't think we would probably be in a position to be ready for the fall town meeting, is where I was going. This morning at the chairs meeting, Kim said that it was August, and then it started in August, then it'd be like 6 weeks, and then they would close the process for those articles. So I don't know if that includes the bylaw, it doesn't really matter, because I don't think we can be ready in that timeframe anyway. I mean, I suppose if we sprinted, we could try, but
That's up
public
to
meetings.
the board, I think you have time, but the public hearing is an important piece.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Just to map out between here and August.
Well, before we did that, I think this time around, we should have a meeting with the select board. We should have a meeting with, there's probably a couple other boards that we should meet with ahead of time so that we don't, what is it, finance, because they voted against the $10,000, which started that whole process
Right.
down. So I think anybody who could have an impact on that in terms of recommending against it at the town meeting, we should try to meet with them ahead of time.
I'm speaking for myself here. I think one thing that would be useful for the boards and committees as a whole, and I don't know if they got into this in the chair, is to stop the mentality of the roadshow where you're going to each of these committees and to have one forum where this discussion takes place for everybody to be part of, because that takes a lot of time. And things get lost when you talk to 4 or 5 different boards about it.
The problem is, when we did that, we did have a meeting like that for the district, and it totally got hijacked by 3 people.
Yeah.
And it was also winter, and it was also bad weather, and there was a whole, but it really got, there was no, I don't think there was anybody from any other boards that were there.
I'm not saying it's perfect, but if we're looking at one or the other, going to other boards necessarily may not be the best. But it is however the board would like to proceed.
I would like to get, this is where I'd like to get an outside opinion, like the guy out in Western Massachusetts, or somebody like him. Just give us an hour. Here's the situation we're in, here are our goals, we want to preserve buildings, we want to preserve homes. How best to get there? I mean, if demolition delay, going to 18 or 24 is a good tactic, do it. But how should we think about it? Because you don't want to go out and then lose again. You really want, and you want to have a really strong argument, and you want to be able to persuade people.
Yeah.
Well, it will be opposed by a few people.
It will be, of course. But I would like to I would like to just hear what other, maybe, hey, in such and such town, they did this, or this is proved, to be the best way at it, or, I don't know. I mean, it's not, this demolition delay is not working. We know that.
I think we're gonna have to do that ourselves, because each town's different. This town has a history of that is not the same as many other towns.
It's true.
And I really think whatever path we choose to go, I don't think we're gonna find a lot of wisdom from some of the other towns, because their situation's not the same.
Yeah, the context.
Yeah, but it's a political campaign, basically. I mean, I think you have to view it that way. And we're not,
We
we don't have a lot of history sort of running.
Well, we did we have talked about hiring a consultant to help put together a public education
Right.
thing.
Yep.
That gives us a blueprint on
Yep.
how to go forward, and then once we get that blueprint, to actually potentially use the CPC application
Yep.
to help fund what would take place. That's a long-term process.
Yeah.
I still think that's a valid approach.
Yeah. I mean, my question is, I agree it's a valid approach. Do you jeopardize that sort of longer effort if you move more quickly on a demolition, a change to demolition
Right.
delay? And I don't know.
There are people here, I can tell you, Joan was mixed, but Ron clearly viewed, when he was here, that it would be put in jeopardy and it would not pass.
Yeah,
So, I mean, and very, very clearly,
yeah.
I think we have to make that judgment call.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody else is gonna make that judgment call.
So I guess the question for us right now is, what do we want to, go back to the timeline, do we want to try to go for the November meeting, or do we want to take our time and look at making the amendments to, or any changes to the demolition bylaw in the May timeframe? I think the May timeframe gives us a chance to get some of this advice that we want to get, do some public education effort, and have our public hearings. I don't think there's a lot to
It
be
also has
gained.
to be run by town council.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot to be gained by trying to rush to November.
I agree with you.
I'll go with that.
All right,
Yeah.
great. So we're gonna move toward that, and I guess.
Do we have an idea, I mean, or like what we're thinking?
We've had many discussions on this before. My point of view is the fewer changes that we make in the existing bylaw, the easier it's gonna get done.
Mhm.
I would recommend the only changes we do, though I could be talked into others, but the only ones we do is make it 18 months instead of 12,
Mhm.
and make it 75 years versus 1925.
Yep.
And I write, no other changes, make it simple, easy.
Yep.
People don't have to think at the town, they don't have to read through it. We make it very clear, these are the only changes that are in here.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think there's the way that 1920 line is worded makes it a problem to just change that to 75 years, because we already argued that we don't think it applies except to that one little provision underneath it, which means the whole definition is still confusing. So I would want to go a little further and say we're just simplifying what's a significant house.
We may get some pushback on that 75 years, because there are a number of folks who buy 1950s houses who don't see that as an issue and wish to demolish them without coming
Well,
before
they're
us.
going to get surprised, because some of those houses are
Oh,
already
I
on our
know.
list. Some houses less than 75 years, I think, are already on our list.
Yeah.
Some of the recent additions included
Yeah.
mid-century modern
Yeah.
houses.
Yeah.
So why don't we just say, well, I don't think we have time at this meeting
Yeah.
to resolve it, and just say, but I do think it's gotta be, we need to find, one is, I think a timeline has to be developed that says, if we wanna get this on the spring calendar, this has to be done by this date,
Yeah.
this by this date, this
Yeah.
by, because you're right, it has to go in front of town council. I think it has to go in front of the select board. There may be other stuff, there's a document that defines what has to happen. And I think getting a time and action
Yeah.
schedule would make sense.
I'll take that as a thing to do for the next meeting, is come up with a draft that we can kick around and see.
I think you also need some sort of more comprehensive list of how many buildings have been destroyed or demolished.
Yeah.
Because and maybe Ron can help us with that.
Yeah, maybe.
Actually, I think he's probably the best, because I don't think there's any lists that exist like
I
that.
don't think.
He probably could tell you a lot.
Yeah.
We can go back into the archives of the requests that we've had and look at them. I think they're online. We can find that.
The demolition delay request, demolition
Yeah.
request? Oh,
Yeah, even if you did a 10-year window, I'll tell you something.
Yeah. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is wayfinding update. I don't know who's got that, who's going to, Thaddeus, did you go to any recent wayfinding meetings?
I did not.
Do you know anything that's going on there, Mike, that we need to act on at this point?
I think the only thing that I would update is that there's an RFP currently out for the next phase in wayfinding that closes the end of the month, just to move the design forward for signage throughout town.
Okay.
Do I need to be, I may have volunteered, I had hernia surgery recently, and I think it wiped out a storage of information in one side of my head.
I thought you were.
Yeah, I may well have volunteered and then totally,
Yeah, but I may be conflating that with the Cultural Commission, because I think you volunteered for that.
I may have to. That's this is
That was you? Oh,
this is a dangerous conversation.
Remember that he volunteered for everything.
Yes, exactly.
All right, well, I don't know that we have any direct wayfinding issues, it sounds like. I think the Cultural Commission is more germane, because we've got the comprehensive cultural plan.
Yeah.
But let me just do quick updates on the next two, which are under old business. The Form B invoices, we received some invoices, a couple of invoices for those.
I haven't processed it yet, but I will this week.
Okay, so that means that Eric is still working and he's processing these along. One of the things I didn't get a chance to do was look up, I think as he does that, he submits the list of properties that he covered, that he did already. I want to go and see how many of those have made it to Macris, to see if we can get a sense for how long it's taking from the completion, the submission, to when it's available online. I don't really know the answer to that. But anyway, that project is going along nicely, and then the same for the archaeology project. I don't have anything new on that changed from last month. It's still on schedule, and it'll be later in the year that we'll see results from that.
Perhaps attendant to Bruce's remark about the project that we were just talking about at the old Governor Prince's, will there be an opportunity for exploration of that property prior to its development?
That's a good question. I don't know. Do they have to do an archaeology review on that property?
I'm not sure of that.
Because we're, I know in the phase 3 going down, they're gonna be sure that there are monitors along the way for that. And I wonder how we bring that at least to somebody's attention as that moves forward.
Who would be the appropriate, who's responsible for that? It wouldn't be the zoning board of appeals, it would be the building commissioner?
I'll look into that.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next item is public education, and this is where we can talk about the comprehensive plan coming together with the public education. So we think we're ready for that RFP to go out.
I think, yeah.
Mike, I know you and I had a conversation about this, and we were waiting on something with the comprehensive plan, but that seems to be done for the cultural comprehensive plan now.
Yes, so the three of us had a discussion following last meeting. The Public Education Initiative solicitation is drafted, and we talked about waiting for the comprehensive cultural plan to be put out and finalized, which is due end of this month, or maybe beginning of next month to be out, and just to ensure that they kind of dovetail together. We talked about reviewing that scope with Chris Skelly, who had presented here. I did that directly, and so that was a good project, something that he would be interested in. Now it's just about whether or not waiting for that comprehensive cultural plan to make sure that it kind of falls in line with what the findings are, because that is a plan between historical and cultural district and council.
So do we need to review that at a meeting or something, or are you comfortable putting this out once we see the comprehensive plan?
I think whatever the board prefers. I can bring the plan here first, I can bring the RFP draft. That's kind of why I put this on here, to see what the preference is.
I don't fully understand what we're deciding here.
There may be, for example, there might be recommendations in the comprehensive cultural plan as far as things to do that are not part of the education initiative, that we say, well, I wish I put that in there.
Yeah, okay.
So that's all kind
Okay.
of can say. So perhaps the plan might be to bring both documents when available.
So,
Just
but
look at them side by side.
do we need a meeting for that, or is that something that you could do on the side, and then we could go
I
ahead?
can do it on, like, just review the cultural plan,
Yeah,
the
to
comprehensive
see-
plan.
And see if we need to amend the RFP based on that. Is everybody comfortable if Thaddeus does that? And that way we can move forward on the RFP between now and the July meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at some of the highlights today, character is definitely in one, as identified, certainly economic development, those both fit. I think those both fit to our advantage.
So does that sound all right to everybody? That way we can move the RFP as soon as that process is done, and then maybe by the July meeting, we might even have some ideas from that, depending on how quickly everything gets turned around. But certainly for August, that way we would. And Mike, I think we were saying that we were going to send that, I gave you a name of one firm, we were gonna send it to Chris Skelly. Do we have a third? We needed 3, right? Do you need a third one to send that to?
I've got 3.
Oh,
If there's
okay.
others that the commission would like that sent to, we can send it more, but 3 is the minimum.
Okay, and you're set for those 3. Okay, and if anybody else has any thoughts?
I don't think for 15,000, they're gonna be knocking the doors down.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Could I just say that, the whole nature of culture and economic development has so many active tentacles in this community at the moment. Tomorrow night's Citizens Forum down off Skate, towards Rock Harbor Road there. There's a speaker coming that's going to talk about the economic impact of culture and the arts and all of that, and he has some points of view that he's going to share at this Citizen Forum. I was interviewed the other day by Amanda from Economic Development around issues related to what was, what should be, et cetera. So I just think that there's a lot going on,
Yeah.
and it's an important conversation. That's
Well,
all.
so what's the event where somebody's coming in to talk about culture and,
Oh, this is somebody from out of town, the Citizens Forum.
okay,
So it's at 5 o'clock tomorrow night down at, where Public Access TV is?
Yeah, on Locust.
Locust.
Yeah.
across from the Oddfellows?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I think, those are opportunities for us to get out in front of people and talk about
Oh, yeah.
historic preservation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, I'll try to make that.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay, so the next item we had on the list was the website hosting. So Mike has been working on an alternative to the current externally hosted website where you're able to go in and see all the properties that are on our list, although now that list is out of date on that site. And I'm pretty eager to get that taken down because in August it comes due again for us to pay another $500, which we don't want to do. So do we need to vote on that?
No, what I put this on here for, I made sure with IT that anything that is currently hosted or any functionality on the current website that you're paying for can be done through the town website, whether it's the PDFs that are not yet live on Macros, whether it's the direction and/or an overlay that would sit on GIS if you wanted to see if their property was. All of that is capable, so I think if it's okay, you guys could go ahead and cancel.
Okay, let's do that. The thing that the town couldn't do, and I think still can't do, is maintain the database of the property name, so you can click on that to get to the PDF. But I think the map replaces that. So by having a map that has the layer that contains it, you'll be able to go to the map and pick that, and that will take you to the PDF or to the Macros, whichever one is fine with me. But that I think, if we can get that functionality in, then that would be, I think that's really useful, because every time I find myself, with a demo delay or anything else, the first thing I'm looking for is, oh, wait, where's the Form B on that? And that's the easiest way to find it. Otherwise, you have to, the Macros site is more difficult to use. You gotta go find Orleans, find the street address, go through their little acknowledge that you got there. Anyway, so do you have any time frame, Mike, on when that might be able to be done?
I have the lists and I have the information, so now it's just about getting the PDFs uploaded to where they can be. So we can do a couple, that can be done relatively quickly, within weeks.
Do you have the PDFs?
I have, it's a good question. I don't know if I have them from Eric, if he's providing them.
He provided a set that he did, that, he gave us, I think you had the disc from that, because he gave us a disc and the paper
I
copies.
don't know if I have the ability to open a disc.
Have we gotten anything recently? I remember getting something like that a couple years ago, but I don't remember anything.
We've had in the last 6 months. for
Yeah,
sure.
but that was the last batch. That was that $9,900 grant, I think.
And that's, I don't recall if I've had anything since
But
then.
what about everything before that? Like all this, we don't even have, the ones that are on Macros, we don't have PDFs for. They're gonna have to put the link to Macros.
I think Eric, I think if you asked Eric, I think he has folders, I think he could prepare it and just send it.
Yeah.
It's my guess.
But I'm saying there's a whole bunch that he hasn't gotten to yet that have been on Macros, and that's the only existing place they are. Is because he hasn't created a new one yet, you know what I mean? He hasn't done it or redone it. So those we won't have PDFs for. And so there we'd have to go to the Macros site probably. And it's not hard to do. You can create the URL to get there. You just have to copy it from the Macros site, but it's work. So I don't know if there's somebody available to do that or not.
There is.
Actually, you know what, now that I think about it, there's a layer, a GIS layer, if there's somebody who's really good with this stuff in IT, they could probably just go to the Macros GIS stuff and just take what they need, because I think it's in there already. Because when you go to the Macros site, there's a little, if it has a Form B, there's a little icon that says inventory. And I'm pretty sure that is a layer in the GIS data. I just don't know how to get there all the time.
Given the time, I don't want to belabor this, but I would ask the commission not to duplicate the work that Macros has. I know it's difficult. What I think for sure needs to happen is property identification on our GIS.
Yeah.
PDFs that are not yet live on Macros.
Yeah.
But as far as the dual hosting of information, that's when things can get outdated and.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut that down, so, because I don't think it's worth having right now, it's outdated, and so I'm gonna call, if everybody's okay with that, I'm gonna call the Cold Dev is the name of the vendor, I'm gonna call them and say that we would like that site taken down, return all the information they have, and
Do you want to do that before the current grant, or what we paid for runs out, just in case?
I mean, it's August,
Is it August or September?
I think it comes up in August, we paid them late last year.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was like mid-August when it was running out, and we didn't pay the bill until September, I remember.
No, I think October.
Yeah, right, it was late, whatever it was. Anyway, I don't think there's any harm, only because it's outdated, and I'm not sure how many people are using it anyway. So I'd rather get it closed and.
I just ask, if somebody was to go to the end of River Road or to the Rock Harbor, is it on their own initiative that they say, oh, I could look up this property and get information from the town? Or is there going to be a sign at each of these places that literally says, information about this site can be derived at, and I'm certainly in favor of the latter.
Yeah, we haven't done it yet, but I think we would certainly want to see that as part of our education initiative at some point, to be able to put up more markers and signs. And Thaddeus has been talking a lot about a program to get people to put signs on their houses, which wouldn't be done with CPC money, but we might find other ways to do that. So I think it's.
Well, I think actually, if they wanted to, I think Joe could ask for that and get a CPC grant.
Well, I thought it because of.
I'd love to.
No, because they have their very corporate structure.
So you can give it to Cho, and then Cho could give the
We
signs
wouldn't
away?
give it to Joe. Joe would request it and we would approve it.
But I meant, Cho would get the money, and then Cho could, even though it was money from CPC, Cho could give a sign to a private residence?
If they wanted.
Joe's gotten plenty of money that they've used in different ways.
I think we should sit down with Joe and have a conversation about some of the initiatives we're looking at. Just by the way, if you haven't recently walked down the street in Chatham from downtown all the way out to the water, I mean, every 9 out of 10 houses, plaques, when built, what the original homeowner was, and what the building was. And they're great, and they give the sense that, these are permanent, that these are not to be taken down, even though obviously they could be.
We have no idea how they got there, right?
What's
How
that?
those plaques got there.
I haven't asked, but I don't know how I have one on my house from the Historical Society. So obviously, and it's an oval, it's a beauty, calling it, the parsonage from the Universalist Meeting House. So I assume there's some history of having done this.
Yeah, way back.
I also have one on my house that was the office for the landing field along the Captain Linnell
Really?
strip there. And I just wrote them and said, hey, it was built in 1950, I want a sign. And I think I paid them $75. And they
Who
sent
did you
me a
write to?
beautiful sign that sits
Okay.
on this lovely little building.
Who did you write to?
I think I wrote to the Cho.
Oh, okay.
That's
Interesting.
that's who I think provided the sign.
That wasn't recently, though.
No, it was when I bought the property.
All right, the last item on our list is the committee review and appointments. So what's happening, if you haven't heard, is that the select board is undertaking an effort to review all of the charges of all of the committees and regulatory boards and commissions. They've done some of them, and they're thinking that that's going to take a little while longer yet. So what they're doing is not necessarily finalizing, reappointing people. So Bill and I are due, our terms are up on the 30th of June. And it's entirely possible that the select board will not reappoint us by then, but they're telling us stay, eventually that will get sorted out. The thing that I brought up at the committee meeting this morning was, well, what if we get a demolition delay? Oops, sorry.
Oh, there, okay, thank you.
Sorry. What if we get a demolition delay in July and two of
Move
them?
my car.
And And two of the, oh, we're gonna get painted. Two of the committee members have not been reappointed. I said that somebody could come back and say, hey, you're not going to valid. Anyway, they're looking at that. They expect, we have 30 days anyway, that's already in the bylaws or in the procedures, that 30 days after this term suspended, you're still okay to be on the commission, and they expect that they'll either extend that or they'll reappoint people as they need to. So
Right.
anyway, I just want everybody to know that's ongoing. It doesn't seem to be a major issue to us. Our charge probably isn't gonna change because it's in the bylaw. And the bylaw, as we just discussed, would take a while, so I don't know that we'll have dramatic changes.
But I
Unless you have
do,
any different
I
information.
do think that an agenda for next month needs to be a review of what our charges are and a review of that bylaw, that in order that we're in compliance with this discussion that's gonna go on amongst everybody.
We also need to vote on officers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, we should be doing it now.
Officers
We did it
for
last year.
what?
President,
I think we
Or
usually lead to the beginning of the next fiscal
we did
year.
it in June last year. Yeah. We did part of it. See, I was appointed CPC in June, and everybody else was.
You're right, we did it because Ron was leaving.
Yes.
At the end of it.
And
Ron and
Joan
Joan were both leaving,
Yeah.
that's right. So we don't have that same, because that was
Right.
the only year that I remember we did it in a timely way.
Yeah.
Because we had no choice.
No, we've done it in June before.
Have we? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's make sure we put that on the agenda for next meeting.
Good.
And I'll just point out, there is, the charter reference is just the appointment of this commission, and chapter 106 is the charge, if you will, of the board. So there is no other document outlining what the purpose of the committee is. Chapter 40D, MGL 40, section 8D gets into what a town can do for a historical commission. As far as this body, it's chapter 106.
Okay.
That's what you've discussed a few times.
Yeah.
Is there any need for us to have that printed out, and do you see any of, going forward, do you see, I'm thinking about Kim's conversation this morning with all of us as to streamlining who reports to who, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think we're fine and don't need to discuss this any further?
As discussed earlier for for May town meeting, the most important thing I think you guys can do is look at 106, and
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
it, and that's the document.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that surprised me a little bit, Mike. I thought that there's some language I saw either on the website or somewhere that is a little broader than this intent and purpose within 106, but I'll go look at that. But if that's true, then that I might have ramifications for what we've been doing, because we've been doing some things that are more generally about historic preservation than what it says in this.
Just for the record, I'd like to report that Mr. Massarelli is doing an exceptional job. The task that he didn't want to assume, and we're grateful.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, that means I can't withdraw my name next month from.
Exactly. It's just
From
that he do it
consideration
now.
for the office.
I recall you saying something about if you were thought to be doing a good job, you would just stay on anyhow, so thanks.
Might have to look that up in a minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Like Ron,
Appreciate
14
that.
years later.
Yeah. All right, well, does anyone have any other business that we need to discuss today?
And we need to approve meeting notes,
Oh, right, sorry, how did we miss that? Did I miss that one?
14.
Oh, sorry, that was right. I put a note in my notes that said et cetera. I was supposed to look back up at the other, at the rest of the actual agenda. Okay, yeah, 14, go to, all right, so does anybody have any issue with, and it's only 1 month, right? We caught up with
Correct.
the, yeah. Does anybody have any issue with the June 8 minutes? No, okay. I had a couple of changes and those were made by Jennifer. Okay, all in favor, motion to approve minutes?
Yes, so moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes.
If I could, just very quickly, the note where the thank yous on here, this is Jennifer's last meeting as the clerk. I'd like to thank her for her exceptional work with this committee and all, but she will be stepping down as the commission's clerk into this month. So
Oh,
Is she
that's-
just,
that's too bad.
is there any change? She just won't be doing this commission?
it's-
Because she does CPC too,
I
that's right.
don't know if she'll be doing CPC.
Yeah, we didn't have CPC meeting last month, so I'm not aware of anything's
I'm
changed.
not sure. I just know she's no longer doing the historical commission.
Well, is she doing this month's? All right, well, in that case, Jennifer, make sure to put in the minutes that we all very much appreciated your efforts, which were very good.
thank you.
Excellent, in fact, so thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, would someone like to move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Favor?
Hey.
All right,